program group of Winrock International and is the host of the NGFN webinar series, which are monthly. Wallace Center has been leading organization in this movement for sustainable and equitable food systems for over 25 years. Today, the center supports entrepreneurs and communities as they build a new 21st century food system that's healthier not just for people and the environment, but for the economy. The center serves the growing community of civic businesses and philanthropic organizations involved in building a new good food system in the U.S. In particular, we're focused on advancing regional collaborative efforts around the country to move good food being healthy, green, fair, and affordable food, beyond the direct marketing realm into larger and wholesale channels. And I think today's webinar around food hubs and emerging food hubs is particularly relevant for us. The National Good Food Network, or the NGFN, is one of the key initiatives of the Wallace Center. It's structured as a network of networks, ensuring efficient flow of information and innovation from boots-on-the-ground projects to the national level and back down to the grassroots level again. The Wallace Center coordinates and supports this network. Our goals are to work with growers to ensure that there's an abundant supply of good food to meet high consumer demand for the product, to collect and disseminate the best models, stories, methods, and outcomes, and to ensure that policymakers are informed about the wonderful successes of the network and the partners in it, so that we can continue to increase support for regional and healthy food. Of course, you can learn more about the NGFN at our website, ngfn.org, and we have a library of fantastic resources there as well. So without further ado, let me move us over to this particular webinar. And let me just set the stage as Jeff did a little bit earlier on, in that, we're seeing an accelerated growth in the number of food hubs and the size of food hubs and the interest in food hubs across the country from a variety of sectors. As a result, I think there's a plethora of folks asking some of these early on questions, the emerging questions, and yet at the same time we've got a strong cadre of experienced food hubs. Today's webinar is really an opportunity to bring together all those folks asking those emerging questions with people that have been there and done that. Right? So we've got 3 food hubs who've been in business for various lengths of time, some more freshly asking those questions and some more veteran. So it's an exciting time for us, and we hope you'll stay with us the whole time. First today, let me introduce you to Jim Crawford. Jim is the owner and operator of the New Morning Farm, 90 certified organic acres in south central Pennsylvania. Jim's been a diversified vegetable grower for 41 years, direct marketing from the start in his nearest big city, Washington, D.C. In addition to helping to establish various farmers markets in the city, Jim was the founder and is now the president of Tuscarora Organic Growers Cooperative, a 25-year-old wholesale produce distributor in the Baltimore, Washington market. The cooperative connects its 47 member farmers to hundreds of local retailers and chefs. It's a pleasure to have Jim with us. Jim, let me turn it over to you now.
Okay. I guess I can be heard, right?
We can hear you.
All right.
Speak up just a little.
And John and Jeff, thank you very much for having me. We're glad to show off and talk about our co-op because we're proud of it. So let me get to my slides. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Oops. Go back. How do we go back? Yes. All right. I'm going to spend just a couple minutes talking about who we are now, what our co-op is consists of, and a little bit about just basic facts about what we are. And then I'm going to spend a lot longer time talking about how we started and telling you our history and our story of starting up, which I think is kind of unusual and interesting. So this first slide here is a good one because it shows you the kind of terrain we're in. We're in the mountains of south central Pennsylvania, and it includes my farm a little bit right in the center there, obviously, and then to the left, our co-op warehouse, which is on its own real estate and its own land, and owns its own buildings, of course, and so you can first see who I am, and then look to the left, and you'll see what the co-op looks like. As John said, I am a long-term vegetable grower, always been organic. We grow about 60 different crops on about 45 acres with rotations with cover crops. Most of our business is about 2/3 of our production goes to our retail in Washington, D.C. and Baltimore, and the other third goes to the cooperative, which is Tuscarora, which is there to the left. So that's who I am. I have a lot of employees, about 25. Lots of, well, you can see the greenhouses and tunnels and so on, okay. So let's see here. Get the slide advanced here. Yes. Okay. So we're located in south central Pennsylvania, about 70 miles west of Harrisburg. The important cities, though, are Washington and Baltimore. You can see there, we are 120 miles from both. It's equidistant, kind of a triangle there. So that's a pretty big factor. We've got good interstate transportation between us and our markets. So you can see we're in a really rural place, and it's also kind of mountainous, and our climate is well, similar to, it's colder than our market area, but it's a little bit warmer than, say, New England, but only a little. So, okay, let's see. All right, now you can see our warehouse of our co-op, and that's its present state after 25 years of development. So we are, let's see here, try another one. Okay, we are 47 certified organic vegetable growers, and the structure is that the membership are the owners, the only owners, so 47 grower member owners, / It's kind of interesting because our membership, I think, is diverse in terms of sort of ethnically or culturally or something. Roughly half of us are Amish. I am not one of those, when I say us. About another sizable segment are Mennonites, which are somewhat different culturally, and then the rest of us who are what I call the college kids or the hippie farmers or something. And although we haven't been hippies for a very long time, but anyway, so we are. I would think that's interesting that our membership is so diverse, and yet we have cooperated really smoothly for 25 years, and I think that's a real plus, and we're proud of that. So here's just real quickly a couple more of our members, just so you get an idea of the diversity of the crops also. Yes, and okay, so that's our producers, 47 certified growers, and we're all in the area of within, I'd say, 50 miles or so of the cooperative warehouse. Our customers, our market, on the other hand, is of the cooperative is chefs, retailers, including food co-ops, and our own growers, which this slide is represents. Our own growers buy from the co-op as well as sell to the co-op and take what they buy to their farmers markets in Washington, D.C. That's what I do. That's what this guy is doing. And so that's another important segment of our market is our own growers. Here's one of our chefs. Here's one of our food co-op guys. So just to summarize, we are 4 full-time staff. We have a general manager, an operations manager, a production coordinator, we call him, and a financial person, and 12 part-time / seasonal people that are like dock people and drivers and so on. So roughly 16 altogether. We send out about 100,000, or now it's, I think we're up to more like 120,000 cases per year. So that's, for us, that's a lot of produce. We do twice weekly deliveries. We've tried various delivery schemes, and that's what we've kind of come down to in the last year or so. And we do it year-round. We're really proud of the fact that we've been able to extend our season to year-round. So our annual production plan is the heart of our business. It really is, and it's just terribly important. It's where everything comes from. I mean, in terms of making us desirable to our grower members as far as an outlet goes, and also making us attractive to our market because we have a plan and we produce, according to plan. So let's see. So 1,200 items on our production plan. Our marketing, as I said, I think I went over that, and our growers. So let's get to our history. I'm getting my slide advanced here. Okay, well, that's functions. As you can see there, pooling produce obviously is number one. Planning production, as I said, is really totally critical. We have lots of great staff services. All of our profits are returned to our member growers, and we do sharing of expertise in terms of crop improvement meetings every winter, 2 or 3 of them, and they're really helpful. And then we have group ordering of season supplies. But pooling and distributing the produce is clearly number one and by far. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so our history. Our history is kind of unusual and interesting and kind of unconventional. There's our first office. That was a little shed in my backyard. In 1988, we had been growing vegetables for, something like 15 years at that point, and we were really frustrated by our difficulties of wholesaling. We were retailing, but we also needed to wholesale. And we had a couple other growers near us that had similar problem, and so we looked at each other one day and said, wouldn't it be cool if we could pool our efforts and take turns, say, doing our wholesale sales and distribution, so that we pool the process and combine the process so that we wouldn't have to do small amounts. We'd get some economies of scale. So we thought about this, and we got excited, and we looked at some examples, especially, for example, in Oregon, something called organic OGC, Organically Grown Incorporated. It used to be Organically Grown Cooperative, now it's OGI, I guess. And then a co-op in southern Vermont called Deep Root. We looked at them, and they were going already at that point for a couple of years, and so we were kind of inspired by them. So we said, well, let's see if we can form a cooperative. What do we need to form a cooperative for marketing? And so we got a mailing list, and we got people. We contacted as many people as we could, which was only maybe 15 or so. We called a meeting, and everybody came into my living room, about 8 people, and one night in the winter, and we looked at each other and said, here's the idea, and here's how we could all benefit from collaborating and doing collaborative marketing. Everybody got excited, and we of course thought, well, how can we fund this from the outset, and how can we kind of get it kick off financially? And so we went out the next day, and we started making calls and thinking about possible grants and stuff. There was a state program at the time that looked like it might work. Anyway, we came back together a few days later, and the results of the research was nothing's available. No funds are designed for something like what we want to do. So what do? And we all were crestfallen and disappointed. And but we looked at each other and said, this is too good an idea to give up just because we don't have any money. We can do it if we can do it on the, informally. And what do we need for the basic elements? We need a person, we need a desk, we need a phone, we need a truck, we need a cooler. So if we can get those things together, we can start operating without any formal structure, without any capital, without any of the formalities that would make things more complicated. So we thought, let's just start off and get the benefits of cooperating without any kind of structure, without any kind of financing, because we have a person, one of my employees who actually had a surplus of employees, fortunately, that year, and he agreed to do it, to be the person to sit at the phone and take the orders and hear from the growers. We had this little building you see here in the slide. We had telephone in that building. We had a refrigerator because I had just added to my cooling space, and I had a little bit of surplus capacity. And we definitely had trucks because I had trucks for my farmers markets, and I had several days of the week I wasn't using them. So we had all the elements, and we started right off. No formalities, just growers calling in. We all agreed on how we would, which days we would call in and how we would do the offering part. And so very just seat of the pants kind of thing. And no business plan, by the way. But we started operating, and we did a little brochure, came up with our name, and went out to the market, or who we thought the market was, with the person, my employee, who agreed to do this on a part-time basis. And we immediately, on June 1 of 1988, we started functioning, and really we were quite happy about it. In that first year we did $30,000 in sales, which is pretty meager. Now, I have this slide next because this really was the heart of the thing. At the very beginning, we realized that what the most important thing we could do is to coordinate our production and to have a really attractive list of products to offer at any one time, and that we needed to have the growers all agree on who was going to grow what, so that we wouldn't be competing with each other and all having ridiculous amounts of tomatoes and zucchini in August and nothing in October. So that was the plan happened, and we did this. The slide you're seeing is, well, somewhere intermediate in the years there, back in 02 this was. But we started doing this from the very beginning, and we've done it every year since then, made an annual production plan, and now it is extremely elaborate. I don't know how many pages. It's like about 20 pages of very, very fine print. So that was a really important part of our initial efforts, and that's really what made us exist and made us attractive to the market, and made it attractive to the growers, because after all, we were recruiting growers at that point. We really wanted more people to come in because we could see right away that numbers of growers would make the whole process more efficient. So we went on like that for actually 5 years, and in 1993 we hired a new guy to be our manager, and he turned out to be a really brilliant organizer. And he went out, the first thing he did after this was in our 6th, I think, season, he went out and researched the first thing he did is he went and visited those co-ops I described, the ones in Oregon and the one in Vermont, and I think maybe even another one. And so he went to see them, and that was really, really crucial, because he got so much good information from them. And, for example, we were able to use their bylaws, as a template and stuff. So he came back and he wrote up bylaws, and he went to the necessary, offices and bureaucracy, and got us legalized as an agricultural marketing cooperative. And he set up an accounting system, which is very good. Young guy, very young guy, not much experience, but very motivated and really brilliant. And so that was really our first year to be official, and that was in 1993. 5 years later, in '98, we expanded our building. I unfortunately cannot find the slide of our very first version of the building, but you can see this one here is our second version. So. Sorry, it says third, doesn't it? Yeah, well, okay, that depends on what you count, I guess, because at some point we had a couple trailers, refrigerated trailers, parked next to a smaller building. That was our second version. This is our third one. And what you see now is our fourth version going up in 2004. So in 2004, we expanded again, about the fourth time, and that was just a huge success. We're really thrilled with it. And our present situation is this one here, which you saw before. I call it the Palace of Sustainable Agriculture, Agribusiness, and it's very much appropriately scaled for our business, and it's been really hugely successful as infrastructure for our business. And I'm proud to say it was all designed and managed. The construction of it was all designed and managed by our board of directors. We just sat down at the table and many times, not just once, and came up with the plans at each stage of the development physically of this building, and we had really good success that way with our members cooperating and just discussing openly and really constructive, lots of constructive brainstorming together. So that's the end result. Here you can see sort of the sales growth history, and I'm happy to say that it's very, as you can see, it's very steady and no huge jumps. So we never had sort of terrible growing pains. We always were able to adapt to increased demand, and so we went from 30 cases $30,000 in sales, in 1988 to 3 million sales in this past year. Our fiscal year ends on the 1st of April. So we were just thrilled with that, that we broke the $3 million mark just barely, and fortunately this graph doesn't actually look like 3 million, but believe me, it is 3 million. $3 million or something.
Sorry to jump in. There's a rapid growth from like 2005 to 2008. Do you have something to explain that?
Explain that. Influx of new members. Yeah, I would say it didn't seem. Let's see. Well, and that was right. That was the year after our new building, so that probably helped. But I know I basically can't really explain it. Just those two factors probably. Yeah. And then we had in 7 and 8 and 9 there, we had a problem because we lost our manager, the guy who started us off in '93, had to leave us, and when we brought somebody else in, it was a failure. So that was really a struggle for a couple seasons there, and now we are off with a new guy who's been with us since '09, and he's been very successful. So yeah, that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, I guess I've gotten everything in. I think yeah. Well, here's my little decorative thing here.
Very
nice. So you get an idea of who our growers are.
Yeah.
Now I should mute myself, I guess, huh?
Yeah, well, thank you, Jim. That was good, and there's a lot of questions, and keep the questions coming in, and we're going to do question and answer at the end. And I think Jim will probably respond to some of these questions through typing while the others are presenting, but a lot of them will hit at the end. So why don't we move on to our next presenter is Sandi Kronick. Sandi got her start in this work as the local food coordinator for the 700-member college dining co-op, working with Amish farmers around Oberlin, Ohio. After consulting with Cleveland restaurants to set up a local buying program, she moved to North Carolina and linked up with the Carolina Farm Stewardship Association. And together, they launched Eastern Carolina Organics, or ECO, in 2004. In 2010, as a result of her work, Sandi was awarded the 40 under 40 Business Leadership Award for the Triangle area, and traveled to Chile on behalf of the Chilean Trade Commission to lecture on the U.S. organic marketplace. She serves as the agribusiness representative to the Administrative Council of the Southern SARE, which is one of the sustainable agriculture arms of the USDA. Welcome, Sandi. We look forward to hearing what you've got to tell us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm going to...
Have we given you control of the slides yet?
Not quite yet.
Okay. Need a little support with that?
There we go.
Okay.
Well, Eastern Carolina Organics is a marketing and distribution company. We majorly work with certified organic produce, but we also do some with non-certified and some dairy as well. In addition to aggregating product and redistributing it back out on our trucks, we've also developed some advocacy work. We do extensive business and production planning with the farms that we work with, similar to what Jim was stating. And we've also expanded to do some packaging support just because we realize that it's a lot easier for us to negotiate and graphically approve some of the packaging aspects of the products we work with. I think the main two things that make ECO unique is the following two bullets of the slide. One is that we are a grower and manager-owned LLC, so we set up to really look, smell, and feel very much like a co-op, but without some of the restrictive policies that a lot of the farmers that we were working with were not interested in at the time. So what that means for the most part is that growers are very much involved with the governance of the company, and also with there is a profit distribution at the end of the year, and so growers that are owners in the company get to participate in that. But ownership is not at all required for marketing through the company. We also work off of an 80-20 split. That's a very firm division between everything that's sold. 80% of that goes right back out to the farmers, and 20% is ECO's margin to cover all of our operating costs. And we also really order product from the farms after our orders have come in from customers. So we really don't aim to warehouse anything at all, and we don't really speculate, which is how most warehouses operate. We'll definitely give farmers estimates as often and as quickly as we can, but it's definitely a unique part of how we operate is that things literally come in and go right back out the next day. We definitely like to call ourselves a grower-based distribution company. And that really comes down to meaning that we really care a lot about the growers' needs as well as the buyers' needs, and largely all we're doing is just trying to communicate both aspects to the other party. We work really hard to try to sell things that would be traditionally seen as unsellable, for example, just because we know that it's important for farmers to be able to get something out of a crop, even if it's not 100% perfect for retail. As far as the production services goes, we do a lot of farm and crop planning with farmers. In many cases, that comes down to how many cases we think we can move during any given time of the year, what price we expect to be able to get out of it. We talk about variety preferences and such, but it also comes down to thinking through what stresses the farmer might have had in that crop family in the last year and trying to weave them away from it, really trying to focus on what our farmers are experiencing the greatest success with and trying to slow them down on things that they might be struggling with year after year. We also certainly have to get involved in post-harvest handling support and are very much involved with certification and also kind of transitional planning for the farmers. So what ECO looks like today is that we own 2 trucks. One is a 14-foot and the other is a 24-foot. Both are below the CDL requirements, but are dock height and with lift gates. That's very important to us. We work with farmers primarily in North Carolina, but we do have a couple of farms that we work with in South Carolina. And we are working hard to create grade 2 outlets for product that isn't able to be sold through our traditional means, because again, that we know enhances the overall sustainability of the farms that we're working with, and we're very interested in cutting down on food waste. We ship not only off of our own trucks, which run basically within a 3-hour radius from here, several times each week, but we also put a lot of product on other trucks. Some are our customers' own trucks. They pick up off of our dock, and we give them FOB pricing. But we also use LTL carriers, which are tractor-trailer freight transport companies that run refrigerated trucks up and down the East Coast. And they can be hired for 2 to 12 pallets at a time or 20 pallets at a time. It's a per pallet rate, and we've found that these companies are actually really critical to the growth of our company, which has its pluses and minuses, but there are very few companies that really have the lock on LTL, which is, a few pallets at a time, not a full truckload, and that are cold and that are very responsible and receptive to the requirements of the National Organic Program and signing clean truck affidavits and really respecting the needs of organic product. So we ship really from Florida all the way up to the northeastern part of the country. We moved from our humble beginning in a warehouse that we were in since 2005 to a much larger facility in Durham, which is a much more urban environment as well. The building, we had always leased our last warehouse, and we actually were able to buy a warehouse in a traditionally impoverished part of Durham. It's much larger than our needs are right now, and we really like being around good company, and so we were easily able to find some like-minded tenants that some work in the food space, but others are just in general community development or other for good causes. And so we have a 26,000 square foot facility And we all share docks, and part of the lease agreement was to try to eliminate redundancies. It's not at all an incubation service, but we really like that we can enable other companies to use our forklift and pallet jack, and that's all part of the lease agreement. We do some bulk purchasing for the farmers, primarily it's seed potatoes and also boxes and box labels and product labels. That, again, is just something that's a lot easier for us to handle and interface with the graphic companies on. We can negotiate for good pricing. We can try to control the varieties a little bit rather than inevitably getting sold out of certain potato varieties. So that's something that we like to be able to take the certain stresses off of the farmers, and we can just run that through the company. We have been developing more employee engagement and ownership protocols to try to further diversify our ownership model. And also we've been working with various hunger outreach groups, thankfully, which are expanding tremendously in the last few years here, to try to offer them better discounts and a little bit more sensitivity to what their needs are so that we can try to improve access to local organic vegetables for those at-need communities. So our company started in 2004. I was working for a nonprofit and doing what we were calling at the time membership services. It was a membership organization, and it still is, that had not just consumer and gardener memberships, but also farmer memberships. And so I was really trying to figure out what the gap and the divide was between the wholesale volume farmers that were in North Carolina that were already certified organic and the very strong demand from wholesale volume customers, but who were really stocking their shelves with California organic product. And it really seemed to be that it was largely a communication struggle and a consistency. So we believed in our gut that something that had a strong supply and a strong demand should be able to operate in the free market. And so we launched ECO literally to see if people would put their money where their mouth was and generate the purchase orders and pay the bills to actually be able to help us move the product, and also to see if the farmers were really going to put in the product to be able to be proud of what North Carolina could offer to the organic produce community. So our pilot operations really began in May of 2004, but since January of that year, I was out visiting farms, talking about various crops, and really talking to customers. That year, what I was asking of customers, what were the most obvious crops that they were lacking in local organic supply on in season. So we knew that we really wanted to talk about season expansion and other exciting things. We wanted to talk about asparagus and things that were a little bit more long-term. But at the time, it was, are you able to get organic sweet potatoes year-round? Or do you have organic strawberries in April or blueberries in June? Sweet corn, I mean, what are those things that are supposed to be abundant and local that you just don't have a good local supply for? A lot of that really also came from recognizing that we're a part of a very strong community of direct marketers, and I think it's really important from day one to make sure that you're overly explaining that you don't at all want to compete with the farmers that are very strong in directly marketing to independent stores and wholesale chain stores, and definitely to restaurants. So it was important for us to know that we were outright asking if they already had a local lettuce supplier for spring and fall crops, or whatever that example is, because we did not at all want to be putting anything in the ground that they had something of an ongoing relationship with already with another local farm. We rented a van for the first maybe 3 or 4 weeks, and then pretty quickly a friend dropped me off at Ryder. I signed a 6-month lease, and before I knew it, I was driving a 24-foot truck down Interstate 40. And that truck stayed parked mostly on a farm that was about 30 minutes away from my home. And I drove the truck on my own for about probably 9 months until we were able to hire a part-time driver. At the time, we ran deliveries in the more populated Triangle area of North Carolina twice a week, and then once a week to the Triad. And both of those routes also offered us backhauling options to larger natural food wholesalers that were chain stores. So it offered backhaul to basically their warehouse operations. And I think having more than just stores to work with definitely enabled the farmers that we worked with to realize that they could get more serious about planting more organic crops in the future. So basically from April to December of that first year, we sold about $240,000 worth of product, and it grew tremendously in years 2 and 3. As far as the people who were involved in that first year, we had about 20 farmers from the coast all the way to the mountains of North Carolina that were involved. We did not at all want to have any real minimal requirements of farmers. We wanted to make sure that people could dip their toes into the water and test things out a little bit, and then know that they were more than welcome to come back in year 3 or 5 or whenever they were really ready, but there wasn't any real contract at the time. Like I said, largely what we're working with is certified organic product. We are only working with sustainably grown product, but our labels are really certified organic or non-certified, but our customers know why the products that we represent that are non-certified, why they aren't certified. And so people really do like knowing that anything they're buying from ECO goes through something of an audit and an intake process, and we're not sending out anything that's really been sprayed with any synthetic pesticides, for example. At the time in 2004, like I said, there was really 1 full-time staff, and then really in the slower season, we brought on a part-time driver. And pretty much from our first month, we had a subcontract bookkeeper that probably worked 5 hours a week or something like that. That might be a little of an exaggeration. But by January of 2005, when we launched the company into an LLC, we had 2 full-timers and still our subcontract bookkeeper. We worked with about 35 customers in that first year, and like I said, it was very important from day 1 to have a beautiful blend of restaurants and cafeterias that were very appreciative of the more artisanal items like arugula and what's another good example, cress, some of the funkier items, but also with the retailers that we can offer some really affordable kind of competitive items on a more year-round basis, like sweet potatoes and cabbage. So in that way, we were not just able to serve a variety of customers, but we were also able to serve a variety of farmers. A lot of the farmers we work with would never want to grow some of those artisanal boutique items. I think a weekly cycle is probably one of the most important things for people to nail down immediately if you're interested in starting a food hub, just because it really helps give you what the roadmap is on a day-to-day basis. And I think what's lacking for a lot of customers in working with local food aggregators and distributors is that reliability. It's like Monday might come, and if they don't get another sales sheet, then we're just another flaky company out there. If they're going to get a product list of what's available every single Monday, then we can be much more reliable and competitive with your more mainstream warehouses that are offering avocados and limes and such. So within that weekly cycle structure, you really want to lay out exactly when you're going to notify your customers of what is available. You're going to lay out what your deadline is to collect orders from your customers, and when you're going to turn that back around to your farmers and tell them exactly what you need to have them come in. It's very hard, but always important to have a specific receiving schedule so that people aren't showing up whenever they please, and also exactly what your distribution schedule is, which is also really hard because routing a truck based on different orders that come in on any given day can be quite complicated, but knowing exactly where you are and are supposed to be is important. And then when you're doing your deposits and how you're paying the farmers, and also your production planning and that demand collection that really needs to happen on an annual basis so that you can think big picture in the winter about what's yet to come. So our first meeting, we sat down with 13 farmers, 1 lawyer, 1 CPA, and a facilitator so that I could sit down and have a conversation and have an opinion, really. And we really went through a LLC, a co-op, corporation, nonprofit, and we landed on an LLC because it was such a blank canvas in many ways. The farmers own 40% of our company, and staff own 60% of the company, but the farmers outweigh the staff on our board of managers by a 3/5 majority, and so that form of checks and balances has been really important to us as well. We do profit distribution every year based on a vote of the board, which is really helpful, and we do it in a really unique way. It's based on patronage among the farmers, so literally how much product they put through the system that year in comparison with how much product all the other owners put through the system that year. Not only does that incentivize farmers to stay with the company, but I like to think that because it's unplanned income, hopefully it really helps to sustain them in terms of retirement planning or vacation planning or other things that I think are really important to the overall sustainability of a farmer that often gets neglected. And we have done one big amendment to our operating agreements a couple of years ago, and that was really largely based on succession planning and exactly what was going to happen when people wanted to leave the company. And that was something we did not at all think through in our first meeting in 2005. The original grant goals were really, the reason I put this slide up there is not exactly the content of the grant goals, which was to expand the presence of organic growers' products in the market. But the most important one, I think, for this purpose and this conversation is to keep the effort sustainable over the long term. That was always my biggest responsibility and the biggest burden over me, and that was very positive pressure to make sure that everything we did, whether it was rejecting products sometimes because it had poor quality, everything we did was motivated by making sure that we were going to have a strong reputation and always be there for the next year for the farmer and the year after and the year after. So I think that's something that's important to keep in mind. As far as kind of entrepreneurs' reality check, I think it's really important for people to make sure that not just do they have the right amount of farmers to offer a variety of products to customers, but also literally can their lifestyle support it for a short term. I mean, if you're planning on having a baby this year, it's not a good time to plan on having starting a food distribution program. In many ways, it's just because there's so many factors that are unpredictable, and I think flexibility in the first formation years are critical. Knowing exactly what your partners are really interested in is very important, and in many cases just asking helps them to kind of formulate exactly what their goals are, because it might not always be easily identifiable. Whether you really know your markets and what those kind of low-hanging fruits of crops that you can supply to them, I think is critical as well. And then really talking about your mission and making sure that you're utilizing your mission rather than shelving it and kind of forgetting about it. It's a very good core concept to just constantly come back to your mission and making sure that the decisions you're making in a very fast-paced environment are constantly serving that broad mission. And then making sure that you have that clear plan laid out so that when you're overwhelmed, you can keep going through the process, and then figuring out what kind of help you need. And then I laid out some other stuff that everyone could refer to about wholesale relationships. They seem really simple, but always good to make sure that you know what your principles are. And I always just say it's really important to make sure that your marketing is based on the truth of the way your company operates rather than some distant goal. So there you go.
Thank you, Sandy. I have a feeling there's a whole lot more you could tell us, but I'm sorry we have to stop you there.
No problem.
I think we'll get to some of that in the questions. So our next and final presenter is going to be Chris Hartman. Chris is the founder and president of Headwater Foods in Rochester, New York. It's the organization behind one of upstate New York's emerging food hubs. Headwater Foods has used direct and wholesale strategies to develop a viable supply chain of local, sustainable foods through their growing network of partner farms. In the 5 years since Headwaters was founded, it's grown rapidly and is positioned to be an exciting and effective food hub for the entire Northeast region. Chris has worked as a farmer, an educator, a community organizer, and an entrepreneur within the food system. He and his team bring a high level of energy, creativity, talent, and commitment to Headwaters Foods and the effort to create positive change within the food system. Chris, take it away.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it. Let me just get control here. So it's definitely an honor to be here. Those are some inspiring stories I just listened to, and truthfully, they have been long-time role model projects that we've been watching here as we've worked away up in Rochester, New York. Headwater Foods, I think, like many great stories, sort of begins at a great little neighborhood-based farmers market that my wife and I and a great group of folks started in Rochester, New York. In a lot of ways, the farmers market was sort of a culmination of at that time, my work and experience as a dairy farmer, as a teacher and educator, as a community organizer, and in general as a local food enthusiast. We came in swinging with the market with a lot of ideas about how a market could play an active role within Rochester to reimagine a food system and really have a broad set of impacts and play a positive role in the community. And indeed, with a lot of planning and a lot of fantastic help from farmers and other community organizers and neighbors, we opened the Southwest Farmers Market in 2007 and really had a fantastic market that continues to this day to just be a wonderful access point for that community and for people in general in Rochester as far as connecting with local and sustainable, mostly organic farmers. And you know, it was a fantastic project, put me in the context of working with just an unbelievable group of farmers and other community residents, all thinking really creatively and energetically about connecting our local surrounding farms with Rochester. We started about 2 years into the project to do a lot of thinking together, the farmers and us and other folks that we'd gotten involved in the project. We definitely saw the benefits of the farmers markets and the roles they could play, but it was clearly obvious as well the limits that that model had as far as really impacting the food system. And so we started to think really creatively about what else we can do, what other opportunities are possible. We did some number crunching and spent a lot of time, you know, looking at other research and going to all the different conferences and things like that. And we're aware that even optimistically, if we could get these little neighborhood-based farmers markets thriving and throughout the city, we'd still be talking about, you know, 3% of food dollars in Rochester. So, you know, what is that other 97% is what we sort of scratched our head thinking about. We started to think about, despite the limited aspect of the farmers markets, in some ways, they're also just an incredible asset. You know, 2 years running, we had at that point 24 farmers all drive into the same parking lot in downtown Rochester on a weekly basis. There must be some interesting things we could start to think about, and that's just what we did. I think significant to our story, at least in part at that moment, was our kind of thought about what to do next and how to structure it. We spent a lot of time actually getting ready to file our articles of incorporation as a 501c3, a not-for-profit organization. Seemed like a no-brainer. You know, we'll start neighborhood-based farmers markets, we'll do education efforts, and we'll develop other projects and other initiatives around creating a local food system. And somewhere in the middle of that process, we came to the opinion, like many I think others have, that what we don't need is more not-for-profit organizations, at least in our area, supporting and facilitating an economy around local food. We need new businesses and new business models being that economy around food. So we sort of switched gears and indeed inspired by the Wallace Center and others, really started to look at the kind of triple bottom line concepts, the community food enterprise specific to food, and in general efforts of for-profit for change. Specific to us, we're awfully excited. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll be adding the B Corp certification to our labels and are excited about the role that social entrepreneurial projects can play in efforts of change. So indeed, with the same mission, and indeed you can see in 2009 using the same wordage that we had with the farmers market, we incorporated as Headwater Foods and started to really look at what's next and what we can do. Flowcharts are a thing, as you'll see for me throughout the presentation here, and to some degree this was our first attempt at just getting down on paper the range of ideas that the farmers and I had started to discuss and think about and to some degree flesh out as concepts. And we really, after a lot of discussion and debate, we sort of identified what we considered to be an exciting and low-cost way to get started, to, like I said, build on the asset we had of this group of farmers all coming into Rochester. For us, we were inspired by the concept of CSA, community supported agriculture. There's a lot of wonderful CSAs around Rochester, and a lot of great farmers and organizers that have been part of those projects that we've been influenced by, inspired by. And we were really excited to sort of start with that model and play a role in trying to develop it in additional directions and build on it. Really, as wonderful as CSAs are, we also recognized a limit that some of them have, like our farmers market, as far as really connecting with a whole lot of people in very accessible, very affordable, very enjoyable ways. So we started to put some ideas together around how to build on the CSA concept and model and where to go from there. On the one side, on the production side, our concept was a multi-farm CSA. This is our first group of farmers that we were working with from the South Wedge Farmers Market. Instead of the traditional CSA that would be one farm with individuals signing up as members and paying at the beginning of the season and getting their weekly share from that farm, we put together for the first year 8 different farmers and sat down cooperatively to plan a crop schedule and a plan and who's growing what and what week should we imagine it'll be available. And we put together a crop plan that had 8 farmers contributing to a diverse and abundant CSA share. On the distribution side, we tried to come up with what we like to think of as a hyper-convenient way for people to participate in CSA. And for us, that ended up being kind of workplace-based and community-based distribution locations. So we started to connect with area businesses and sign people up, and our model was that we'd show up in the big green truck there, pull out the awning, set up the table, and run CSA-like distributions right there at those sites. The first year in 2009 when we got this going, we were able to sign up 100 members into the CSA, various kind of forward-thinking businesses and workplaces, and actually one college, the University of Rochester. We got those as distribution locations and signed groups up and began. The second year, we sold out with 250 members, more than doubling it there, learned a lot, had a lot of great feedback. That second year as well, we developed a relationship with Winter Sun Farms and farm-to-table co-packers down in the Hudson Valley, and we began to utilize frozen fruits and vegetables, some from our own network of farms and some from the network of farms that Winter Sun Farmed had developed, and we started a winter CSA program with frozen fruits and vegetables as well as stored root crops from our farmers and salad greens and other greens from high tunnels and other season extending projects. And for the first 2 years that we were doing this, we actually operated right out of the farmers market. We received all of the product for these few hundred members from the farmers right there at the market. We sort of huddled in the corner to sort it out, get it ready for the deliveries and distributions, put it into our refrigerated truck, and then headed out to do our CSA stuff. Starting year 3, we sort of grew out of that and purchased a property with an old barn here and proceeded to sort of build it out in every way possible. And it was actually this year that we purchased this barn that I, for the first time, heard the concept of food hub. And I believe it was through the Wallace Center. And we added a lot of concrete pads, as many coolers as we could fit in there, bought our first forklift, and put a sign up with the Headwater Food Hub. And we were awfully excited about it all. This is our first staff and sort of our first running in a more significant space. We added a variety of services now that we had a facility, the pre-box share that you see, and our ability to connect with other workplaces that we couldn't set up our green truck at, but we could deliver boxes to. And the process sort of continued. Over the last 5 years, we're going on our 5th summer season. We've worked really hard to figure this out logistically and flow-wise, and really polish ourselves up as an operation and as a membership service to folks. And we've worked really hard with our staff to similarly polish ourselves up, really understand our roles in the food system and how we can serve both farmers and members. We've worked really closely with all of our farmers similarly to polish our act up and really figure out together a good and effective way to cooperatively crop plan, to grow together in the ways that we are, and to kind of share and support one another as we go along the way. We've worked really closely with our growing pool and community of members to collectively sort of define what good food is, what does it look like, how do we think we get it, what sort of support and information comes along with it. And we've sort of done our best effort through our website and other efforts to make this a very supported program to help people know what to do with food and how to utilize the great things that are coming to them. And this year in particular, we're really pushing forward with the pre-box share program to even increasingly be convenient and available to all sorts of people that would like to participate in this model. And we've also really tried to build community, put together events, bring people together with and around farmers and food and music and art and drink and merriment in general. And we've really plugged along. That's allowed us to grow the Good Food Collective. This is a slide of the summer memberships in really exciting ways, starting again with that 100 members in 2009, and we are on track in the next week or two to sell out with 1,200 members for the 2013 season. Like I said, we've worked hard to really figure out this particular model. The members have been really excited and satisfied and have been really vocal in helping us shape the program, how we unfold it, and how we continue it going forward. One of the most exciting things to us here in the 2013 season is we're finally closing that gap on the spring and fall side of things, and now we're offering year-round membership opportunities with the Good Food Collective for people here in Rochester. It is worth noting that throughout the 5 years of growing the Good Food Collective, we have started to sort of think about and pilot wholesale ideas. For us, that had a real strong focus on farm-to-school efforts. I actually am a teacher by training and love that whole goal and activity. So with both fresh and frozen product, the same frozen product we were working with on our winter CSA, we started to sell to a few forward-thinking local colleges and universities, University of Rochester and the Harley School, a K-12 school in Rochester. But similarly, a few years into all of those projects, sat down with our farmers and the staff at the time and others involved in the project and started to think about what else. The CSA, ours, and many others clearly playing a wonderful role in the food system, but again, some limits to just direct sale projects, and again, excited about thinking about necessary other aspects of a food system. So we started thinking again about next steps, and for us, I think in 2011 we really were excited about and ready to get started with a wholesale concept and a wholesale brand, sort of building on what we had started to pilot and what we were clearly learning. So indeed a time for a flowchart update, and this time now knowing about food hubs and having learned the term, and I believe at this point, having watched a few webinars myself, we put Headwater Food Hub sort of right in the center and continue to sort of brainstorm and think about all of the different projects we were interested in being part of or in creating. We had our direct sales strategy, but indeed really excited about starting to work towards a wholesale effort. And that's what we've spent a tremendous amount of time, effort, and resources actually doing over the last 6 months or so. We've added to our staff and sort of marshaled our talents and efforts towards really thinking about a wholesale brand that we could start to reach out to stores and restaurants more actively here in our area, but also start to reach out beyond just Rochester, start to really represent upstate growers in our area and start to move food down specifically to New York City, but to the Northeast region in general, ultimately. So a 3 Square Kitchen, we are unveiling it this week. You guys are some of the first audiences seeing it. And we again really hope that this can be a premier upstate local sustainable food brand coming from upstate New York's most fantastic food hub with Headwater Foods. And we're actively ready to learn and grow and develop this project in partnership with all of the farmers we're working with others that we're excited to get to know, and ultimately with all of our customers, retailers, chefs, restaurants, and other distributors. We're really looking forward to growing this project. So we've updated our mission yet again, added this concept as far as being really a direct and wholesale distributor of top quality local sustainable food, and really being a socially and environmentally responsible business, sort of a for-profit, for-change food distribution company. And we've added the specific language now about the Headwater Food Hub and our, management of supply chain logistics, the aggregation, distribution, and so on and so forth. We've of course thus updated the flow chart, and this is our most recent project to some degree because of our desire to really focus in on what we're currently doing and our desire to kind of really push and scale those projects up. We've cut out some of the other creative projects that we're looking forward to working on, and really focused on what we're doing now and what we're focusing on growing. And again, for us, that's the Good Food Collective as far as our local direct sales and connecting with people here in Rochester, and then 3 Square Kitchen as far as our upstate New York wholesale brand. Just to quickly put some numbers on this, we are excited and very much on track this year to break $1 million in sales, which is a significant benchmark for us that we've been curious about, and very much on track to get close to $2 million in sales next year. It's hard at where we're at with our project to be able to project out too far, and with all the different things we're excited to do and different ways we're excited to grow, we're undoubtedly optimistic. Similarly for us, staff-wise, we've really grown and expanded in the last few years. This year we just had our full official staff meeting getting ready for summer distribution and our new distribution crews, and we've got 12 people around the table that are very talented, very excited, and very integrated group, and we're looking forward to moving forward, and we're hoping to continue to build jobs in this area around a local food system and the efforts that go into that. You probably can't really see this chart here, but it goes along with the staff growth that we've had. A significant part of what we've been figuring out and working on is as the staff increases, as the projects increase, how are we a really well-oiled machine, so to speak? Who's doing what, and how do we coordinate all of these things that are going on? So we've spent a lot of time as a team with our farmers and with ourselves to kind of start to really hammer out how this process flows and works well. For us, as far as where we're at right now and what we're spending a lot of time thinking about, we're excited to continue to grow our team, to support them, to allow us to kind of keep running with these great ideas and the momentum we've been able to build. But specifically, we're very much in the process of trying to figure out our next generation food hub. Since September, we've been in sort of a search process, looking for a space to move into, to renovate, and or to build, to lease and or to purchase that's going to allow us to establish upstate New York's flagship food hub in the Rochester area here. We're looking, like many folks perhaps, for kind of basic warehouse facilities. These are sort of some of our numbers and specs. We're very excited about renovating or building out a building in very green and sustainable ways. We're very interested in being part of revitalization in Rochester and economic development and growth around food and agriculture, and building out a space that really represents that. So, some washing, grading, and packing lines and coolers and freezers and loading docks and some office space. we're working in partnership right now with the farm-to-table co-packers in Kingston. We've started to work a little bit with our local food bank here, FoodLink, which has done some processing, and we're starting to try and build some capacity ourselves. Phase 2 of our food hub is really adding that commercial kitchen and processing facility, and we're excited about that. As we search, again, we started looking this past September. We have not found the right building or the right facility. We've made some offers. It's been a real roller coaster ride, but we have just signed a lease for a 9,000 square foot warehouse facilities that was the former Punishers Motorcycle Club pictured here, and we're excited to be moving into that this week, actually, setting that up as our current Headwater food hub and buying us the time to continue the search and to find the space that's just right for us. And on we go.
Wow. Chris, that was amazing. Next time I have flowchart needs, I know who to call. Really done well there. So, and I also need to congratulate our participants. You know, I've done a number of these webinars, and I don't think we've had more questions than all you folks have generated for this. So it's quite a challenge to integrate the questions. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by integrating them into bulk questions, if you will, across all the food hubs so that we can hear from them around some of the core themes that are coming out in the questions. So let me pool a set of questions around the farmer members, the producers, the suppliers to the food hub. Okay, and folks, our presenters can jump in and respond to that as they go. So part of the question is, you know, does the food hub actually purchase the product, and does it take ownership? So some dynamics around that. Other piece of this around relationship to the growers is, can the members, if it's a co-op or even if it's eco, can the members sell outside of the co-op? And how do you manage competition if they do? How many acres are represented when you started? If the co-op started with 20 growers, how many acres did that represent? And then what kind of growth in acres is represented now? And also talk a little bit about the benefits to the growers. Is that relationship one that they really value in the beginning and then now? So who'd like to take a shot at some of those dimensions?
This is Sandy. I can start. I guess as far as the taking ownership question goes, we felt like it was really important in the beginning to stress that we were not taking ownership or title to the product. But in fact, whenever you're selling something and then you're turning around and paying for it, you are to many degrees taking ownership over it. So even if we're not altering it in any way, like we do not break down boxes into family scale boxes at all. Like everything stays in the same case that it came in as. But nonetheless, we're paying for it, so we are taking title to it. I think it was in year 3 that we developed a marketing agreement, which was just our humble effort to wrap our hands around some formality. And in that marketing agreement, it just laid out for the farmers that anything that was rejected by a customer that was considered unsellable, that we would not be responsible to pay for, even if we did technically receive it and then a day or two later we might have gotten that phone call. And as far as the whether farmers are able to sell directly to other markets, ECO was formed to really not have to restrict the farmer in any way. And so we found that it was very important to not require that farmers give their markets over to the company. And actually, I think as often as a farm can interact directly with a market, whether it's behind a booth at a farmer's market or selling to the local co-op that they've always been selling to, it's going to help them be a better business person anyways. They're going to hear from someone else about shelf life, quality requirements, or consistency with grading or something like that. So we actually embrace that kind of concept rather than feel that it's competitive with us. And we really try to duck and cover and not, we won't at all advertise. Like if we know that a grower is already working with one of our customers, we'll be sure not to go out of our way to advertise any of their products or offer a deal on it and try to respect the pricing that they come up with. In many ways, it's just setting up really solid communication with the farmer.
Mm-hmm. Others want to respond to some of the questions in there?
I'm actually interested in Jim's replies, but our quick answers with the Headwater Foods, we do purchase all of the food from farmers for the Good Food Collective, our direct sale model, which again has been our focus works for the last 5 years, I think interesting to that project is how it is very different from a CSA, and we've worked very hard to kind of differentiate ourselves and preserve really what CSA is, which is a brilliant and very relational thing. And it's, one key component is that sharing of the risk side of things for CSA, and we've worked very hard to figure out what is our interpretation of that, what's our version of that as we scale this up and grow it. So we don't currently, we crop plan and to some degree have contracts on all the different food that farmers have said they would grow for the Good Food Collective. But if they have a crop failure or that crop doesn't come out in those volumes, we don't pay for something that isn't delivered to the food hub. That said, we work obviously really closely with our farmers, and if their tomato crop didn't work out, but the peppers are just going crazy like CSA, and that's the flexibility with our members, we start buying all of their peppers and not their tomatoes and put those out in our shares. So we try and allocate a certain amount of dollars towards each farm and figure out how they're going to end up earning that money one way or another. And indeed, all of our farmers have lots of other outlets and are doing lots of other things, and necessarily so, and we certainly encourage that and hope for their success.
Jim, any words of wisdom for us?
Sure. First of all, we represent about 200 acres of production between our 47 members. We haven't counted up lately, but it's really roughly in that area. Our acreage goes from about probably as small as 2 to as many as, well, 40 or so. We had one member that was 80 acres, but we lost him, and fortunately replaced him with about 6 much smaller growers, and so we didn't really feel much of a problem with that. But and as far as benefits, yeah, I think all of us feel that the co-op benefits us tremendously. I think there's a huge feeling sort of we're grateful that the co-op exists and serves us, members, the growers. I think all of us feel that we're getting the best price we could be getting, on the wholesale market. We're getting a premium for being organic. We're getting great, customer service provided by our staff and sales done by our staff. So we really feel like we benefit tremendously. We get a great price on the supplies we order together and so on. As far as the question about competition or our growers selling to our customers or something, yeah, we have had that problem a bit, and we even had a sort of a crisis over that quite a long time ago, which gradually worked itself out really well. But we all understand, and we have a very much of a structured firm rule that we can't sell individually to the co-op members, the co-op customers, because we feel that would violate the planning process, which where we allocate and give commitments to. Almost in a contractual, not formally contractual, but almost a contractual way of planning the production and distributing amongst the growers. So if one of us is selling to the co-op's customers, of course that violates the whole understanding of that agreement that we would plan our production together and make room for each other and not compete. So is that enough?
Yeah, that's good, Jim. Okay. Next kind of bundled question for all of you is around the money, and there's a lot of different dimensions to this, including, I think one, Sandi, you mentioned an 80-20. I don't recall hearing how the others may charge to cover services of the hub. So something around that would be useful. There's questions around margins, whether they be gross and net profits and things like that. Whatever you can tell us that might be instructive for folks looking at trying to start out here. Do the hubs that you folks manage do the billing and the payment? How do they manage all that? And then around being competitive in the marketplace, how are you being sensitive to your buyers' needs around price point and things like that? So kind of a hodgepodge of pieces there, but whatever you can address.
I could answer a couple of those. We are very competitive in the market. We look at our competitors' price lists all the time on a twice-a-week basis, and we try to stay very competitive. Of course, the growers are always wanting it to have the highest price possible, and our staff understands that completely, but we also understand that we need to move the product, and we need to trust our staff, our sales staff, to price it appropriately, and we feel, I think in general, we all feel that they do. Let's see, I just need a keyword there.
Margins, net, gross,
oh, yeah,
billing, payments.
Yeah, when we started off, when we very first started, in the first, we had to pick a number, and we said, okay, let's try 30% to the co-op and 70% to the grower. And believe it or not, we're still really close to that. At the end, we actually, well, we're down to 25-75, but there's some of our product still goes at the 30-70 thing, but it averages out to 25-75. Works really well. When, of course, since we're owned by the member farmers, everything's transparent. We look at all the financial statements every month, and if there's any profit, then we can decide two things. We can say, let's give more. Let's change the ratio and give more to the growers, less to the cooperatives, so that the profits are less. But we actually never really done that. It's always worked out just fine. We have profitable seasons, I would say about 8 out of 10, and we never had a major loss season. So.
Okay, great. Others?
We similarly, started off again with the Good Food Collective. Our wholesale efforts is going to be a whole learning process unto itself. But we started off with the 80% 20% split as well, and over the last 4 years we've actually had to marshal it closer to 70% 30% to keep it viable as best we can. But we're endlessly working on trying to make that make sense. I mean, I think our project, it being not the farmers co-op or we've got, and taking ownership and literally running the kind of warehouse facility. I don't know, we're endlessly thinking about our overhead, what we bring to the table, and how we kind of differentiate the values. But right now we're at about a 70-30 for the most part, and working well accordingly.
I think the only thing that I would add to what they were saying is just that I think the humility of the earlier years, I can see that in the TOG slides as well, like the shoestring efforts of the earlier years really enabled us to be strong all along, and I would say that it's always a good sign to have very little in the beginning. We started with $48,000 of a grant, and I know a lot of groups these days are getting a lot more of grant funding, and so hopefully that just sets the stage for people to be able to really focus on long-term sustainability starting from year one, making sure that income is covering operations as soon as that grant is going to run out.
That's helpful. Let's use that as a dovetail to the next question around financing. And there is grant funding out there for nonprofits, and there's probably some social financing for for-profits. If all of you could talk a little bit about how you started up, what it took to do that financing, how much, what troubles you might have had, and then as you grew, how did you manage your growth? Did you access different types of financing, and did you access technical assistance of any kind? Talk to me about technical assistance both early on and later on, so financing and TA.
I can start just to keep going with that $48,000 theme. So in 2004, we did get a grant through kind of a program of the state legislature in North Carolina, and that $48,000 really just covered my salary, the truck rental, the computer, the business cards, the computer and the printer, and a few other things. And we were retaining 20% of sales from the first day of our distribution, and so we had a little bit of a lump sum to cover the first quarter, which is the winter of year 2, when we had no grant funds. Since then, we've been operating strictly off of cash up until this past year, when we got several loans to purchase the warehouse that we're in and the new cooler equipment. And this year, actually, we've got a small grant from the city of Durham as well. So this was our first free money in 2013 since 2004. And again, it was less than $50,000 both times. And as far as technical assistance, I would really emphasize our customers. I asked every single question you could possibly imagine to our customers. And I don't think we utilized other technical assistance as much as we could have, but really there's no greater, book or source of information than what people are really looking for than the actual people who hopefully you'll be calling them next week to say we have this available. So I guess I would just emphasize customers as really the people to go to for what it is that they're looking for, how they want it packaged, what kind of documentation they need, et cetera.
Thanks, Sandy. Yeah, others.
Well, for Headwater Foods, and again, we're in the kind of for-profit category, we have really been a bootstrapped operation here, just sort of cash flowing everything so far. We've had, I think, like a lot of entrepreneurial projects, sort of that classic story. I have another job. I work as a teacher and do a variety of different activities in youth development, and our strategy has really been to slowly build the project and build the revenue streams to start to prop this organization up. And as it's doing that, and as money is allowed, I'm hiring more people to add to the team to keep this running, with the idea that someday it's really going to take off, and we've got a self-sustaining organization for not only the 14 staff I've built at this point, but eventually for our leadership team sort of rolling into it. But this is a great question in a lot of ways as far as funding. This is something I'm spending a lot of time thinking about these days as we really try to take the next significant step, establishing our food hub here in Rochester in upstate New York. There is, there's some significant capital needs that we're looking at in the not too distant future, and we're watching, like you say, a whole lot of grant money that's being made available around food hubs and regional food system development, and we're really trying to struggle to figure out what's accessible to us as a for-profit company, and how do we deal with situations where not-for-profits do have access to millions of dollars to build themselves out at food hubs, and we're sort of 5 years into trying to make it happen and make it economically viable on its own. How do we bring people together? How do we have conversations about collaboration and partnership? And how do we, as Headwater Foods, find access to similar support and funding as we look to grow? That we're trying to figure that out very much so.
Jim, any comment on startup financing?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, please.
Yep. Yes,
Yep.
I do have a lot of comments. I love to talk about that. We actually, of course, we were disappointed at that first meeting that we found out we could not get a grant. By the time it was all over, we actually were glad that we did not start with a big chunk of money from somewhere else. I think it really, affected the whole mentality and our whole sense of who we were and how independent we are, and how much we love to be that way. We started off just strictly the bootstrapping thing is it was definitely our theme, and we went on cash for the first 4 years. Actually, we just we opened a checking account with zero in it, and as soon as we had sales, we put money in there, and we paid expenses out of the checking account. When it was all over the first year, I remember we had $700. We actually wrote checks based on sales on supplies to all the growers, so we went to zero again, and we did that for the first 3 or 4 years. Finally, when we built our first building, one of our growers did throw in $7,000 for just a few months, and then we went to the rest of the growers, and everybody bought, I don't know, some notes, and we raised, I don't know, $10,000, and then and then we went from there. But and when we finally went to a fairly big expansion, the building that we showed there in the slide, we actually went to a state program that was a low-interest small business loan program, and we borrowed $180,000. We paid almost all of it off now since '04. So, but that whole bootstrap thing, I think, was we were just thrilled about it when it was all over, because we felt so free and independent, and we had done it on our own. So.
Yeah, I can sense that.
Now,
Okay.
As far as technical,
Yeah.
let me talk about technical assistance a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I think of that as two kinds. I mean, the assistance we needed to start up our cooperative, and then the assistance the growers need to become better professional producers. And we have both of those with the starting the co-op. Of course, as I said, our visits, our first managers' visits to those other cooperatives were tremendously helpful and just completely formative, and that really helped us. And then going for the growers to increase their crop crop improvement stuff. We use extension and a number of other sources for, and we have very nice efforts to improve our growers' expertise each winter.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much, Jim. We've got about 4 minutes left, so I'm going to try to move through some of these questions. Next set of questions is around software you might be using for inventory management, for tracking, and then its relationship to food safety and how you might be using that to make sure that when you're selling into these markets, if there's any question, how does it work with the software and inventory management? And then, with the Food Safety Modernization Act coming up, any concerns there or any things you're doing to position yourselves for that? Or any other regulatory issues, HACCP and things like that?
This is Sandi. I have nothing useful to lend in terms of inventory management and IT. We're constantly grappling with that and have tried a few things, and it never seems to work. And we keep coming back to the good old paper and pencil inventory program.
Talk to us. You should see our program. You might like it a lot because it's so similar to us.
Yeah, we use QuickBooks. Yeah.
We got a program. Well, we do that too for our accounting, but as far as handling the produce, we developed a program over many years, and actually got a small grant at one point to improve it, and we had an IT person work on it for us for years, and it's a continuing process to upgrade it, but we're really happy with it. It tracks the produce, it tracks the for the growers and the customers, and our production plan, how it relates to that. Everything's coordinated and consolidated, so we're happy with our IT thing.
So you had that tailor-made. You didn't get something off the shelf.
Yes, that's right.
Anybody have experiences with off-the-shelf products, or any concerns about that? No.
I'm not in a position to endorse any yet, but we've been looking at a variety of them as we get set up with our wholesale projects. There's a lot out there now.
There is a lot out there, and I think a lot of people are scrambling to try to see what they do and how affordable they might be. So I think that's a place with a lot of innovation. Maybe I'll move us on to a next set of questions. There was a series of questions around this issue of seconds and products that might not be on the A list and how that can be important to hubs and others. So talk to me a little bit about how you're managing those, what the markets are. Is there any processing involved? What are we doing, and how does it work with that?
This is Sandi. We don't do any processing on our end, but we have helped work with the farms for them to process it a little further to make it more appealing for customers. We also have been, just through partnerships with food, like hunger outreach groups, we've been able to find markets for it. There's also a farm-to-food bank program that we've recently been lucky to work with, so that we are actually selling grade 1 products to the food bank community. And then lastly, a lot of it is just really putting it on our list, communicating why it's grade 2. Does it have some superficial damage? Does it have some mechanical damage? Is it maybe a little smaller or misshapen? And pricing it really well so that our institutional food service type of environments can take good advantage of a great deal and be able to advertise that it's local organic product, and but not be losing their own margins on it.
Yeah, this is Jim. We don't really do anything with seconds. We did try some years ago to do some processing, or to contract some processing. We actually set up a couple of different things for tomatoes, thinking we could have tomatoes canned or dried, sun-dried. And none of it worked out because we realized that, to be competitive with that stuff, you really have to be an entirely different kind of grower. That the seconds generated by a 5 to 10 or 20 acre grower just have nothing, have no competitive way of competing in the marketplace for production for processed stuff. So we gave that up, and it's always a problem. I mean, it's always a problem of each grower, but we just asked them to deal with that themselves.
Okay.
And similarly, we don't have much going on yet, but it's a big part of what we hope for as far as processing.
Okay, Great. So we are out of time, but let me ask in closing, in just a couple of words from each of you, what was the biggest challenge you faced when you started up?
Well, you want me to start? This is Jim.
Yeah, a couple of words, because we are out of time.
Our biggest challenge by far was recruiting growers. Way more so than creating demand and finding customers was the problem of finding growers that would trust us to handle their produce and that would understand and get the idea of why cooperative marketing was such a benefit. It took probably 10 years before we felt that we had recruited sort of a threshold amount in a way, I suppose, and then we started getting a flood at the 15-year point.
Oh, interesting. That addresses a lot of the questions that came in, so thanks for that. Sandi or Chris?
I would say that one of our biggest challenges has always been post-harvest handling and really uniformizing the quality expectations from many farms so that people know what they're going to be getting that day.
Great. Chris?
Yeah. I think similarly, just the learning curve associated with all the management that goes into supply chain logistics, from soil and weather and farming issues down to consumers and what their demands and needs. There's a lot that goes on there, as everybody knows well, and it's taken us. It's been a challenge to really understand that and get our heads wrapped around what we're going to do accordingly.
Yeah. All right, excellent. So with that, let me turn it over to Jeff to take us home, and I just want to say a quick thank you to all our speakers. Thank you so much, and for the great questions again. Jeff?
Thanks. Yeah, I want to add my thank you as well. That was an amazing wild ride, decades of experience in 90 minutes. Thank you, Jim, Sandi, and Chris, and thank you to all of our attendees. We had over 100 questions come in, and so thank you also to John to trying to get a handle on all those. We're sorry that we couldn't get to all of your questions, but I think we might be here till next Tuesday if we did. This webinar is being recorded and it will be archived on our website along with the 40+ other webinars we've done in the past. Feel free to send others who you think would have liked to have heard this presentation and take some professional development time yourself to dig through our excellent archives. They are organized by topic. We do offer the NGFN webinars on the third Thursday of each month, starting at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Sign-up links are always at ngfn.org/webinars, and get on our mailing list, and we'll send you a sign-up link right to your mailbox. The next webinar on June 20th is all about different options that food businesses have to get financing. There are precious few resources to help entrepreneurs to understand it, and Elizabeth Yu wrote a wonderful book just about to be published, and she will give a train the trainers. If you are an entrepreneur, you will absorb a lot. If you support entrepreneurs, you will also absorb a lot. So please join us. Just let us know in the post-webinar survey that'll pop right up if you'd like to be automatically registered. I also want to let you know about two other Wallace Center websites. Foodhub.info is a food hub of information, research, case studies, a map of the many food hubs across the country. We are working with 9 food hubs across the country called Study. We call them study hubs. You can learn about those, links to TA providers, and links to Food Hub specific webinars. Foodshedguide.org is our site for producers wanting to adapt to the changing food business landscape. We have instructive text and case studies with an emphasis on how to have a viable business in a food value chain. Learn about, for instance, factors to consider when deciding on a legal status such as an LLC or C Corp. That came up today for food hubs. That may be good resources there for you as well. You can find the NGFN on YouTube, on Twitter, and our website, ngfn.org. The Wallace Center is also on Facebook. Come like us. You can search for Wallace Center at Windrock International. And again, if you haven't already, please sign up for our email updates. There's a link on the ngfn.org homepage, or just let us know in the post-webinar survey. We'll sign you up. Contact us at any time. Contact@ngfn.org. The NGFN would like to thank you for your time again. Once again, please fill out that survey, and this concludes the webinar.
The organizer has ended the session, and this call will be